That's a beautiful view of the Napoleonic oaks. And I'm going just beyond them onto the left, because I'm going to talk about something that personally makes myself very angry, and I know it makes those that love the forest as much as I do very angry. I'm going to talk about veteranisation. The trees in this area, which technically are just outside the fence line of the country park, but these on the right side of this trackway are known as the Napoleonic oaks. I'm presuming it's because they were planted around the time of the Napoleonic Wars. These trees, a number of years ago, were marked up for coming out. Bearing in mind these oaks are around 200 years old, I would imagine. The very fact that they were even being considered for removing, not all of them admittedly, but the very fact that they wanted to take some of these out is a disgrace in itself. Those that know me through face-to-face discussions or via comments and posts on Facebook will know how I feel and how Dilys felt when she was alive about the removal of trees, mature trees like these. There is no place for it, especially in an age when, again, they are now telling us that we need to start and plant more trees, and yet we have the conservation organisations taking them out. We've just also had this COP26 conference, and the other day they spent a day saying how much they needed to start and plant more woods and forests, and yet they still want to take trees out. But here at Sherwood, it's not just taking trees out. On a day like today, and a very quiet day as well actually, I think I've only seen 2 people, and they were walking off into the distance, so they must have known I was coming. But in the autumn sunshine and very little breeze, there's virtually nothing today. It's absolutely beautiful here. I love Sherwood. Sometimes it's hard to love Sherwood though, and sometimes it's the last place you want to come to if you're a nature lover. Sometimes you set out extremely happy, full of the joys of spring, almost in spring, but then you see the work that's been done to remove trees or to chop bits off trees, and in this area they've chopped the tops out of a number of trees, and the reason they've done that is called veteranisation. which is a posh, probably university term for euthanising trees, really, to be honest. In fact, there's almost a verb now for the English language, to veteranise. But they've already got one, to euthanise. We should not be killing off trees, mature trees, and mature oaks at that, just to create deadwood habitat when there's enough of it occurring naturally. I can hear a hornet. And where I am now, just over there, there's several trees that have had the tops taken off. There's a bit of regrowth at the top, but basically it's to put the tree under stress and ultimately kill it. How can that be conservation? Now, looking at this end of the country park, you may think, oh, what's he going on about? He's just being gobby as usual and doesn't know what he's on about. There appears to be plenty of trees here, as there should be, because after all, the last I heard, this was a forest. You tend to get trees in forests and woods. But as usual, we need to interfere. We think we know better. We think, oh, we need to remove these trees. So we'll take 5 trees out to protect 1. This area of the forest has always been perfectly fine the way it is. But it seems that in the last year or so, there are moves to open this part of the forest up. Everything that's being done here is being done in the name of conservation. But really, is it conservation? Sherwood has, contrary to popular opinion, plenty of standing deadwood and consequently plenty of fallen deadwood. There's lots of large limbs that have fallen and come off the trees over the years, and a number of trees have been blown down by autumnal gales. Site management, namely the RSPB and Natural England, are of the belief that there isn't enough standing deadwood habitat. There is. There is plenty at Sherwood and plenty standing deadwood that is occurring naturally. There's quite a large number of trees, both in this section of the country park and elsewhere, that are in states of distress, which is a term usually referring to a tree that's dying. And there are trees that die every year in Sherwood, and there's a lot of fallen limbs now. In fact, there's more fallen limbs in these last few years than what there were over 10 years ago. A lot's come down in Sherwood. Part of the reason for that, I've always believed, is that they're opening the place up too much. Too many trees are being removed to protect the ancients, or supposedly to protect the ancients. A natural disaster. The last time we had a real fall of snow before Christmas, a number of years ago, that brought down no end of stuff because the trees couldn't take the weight. But of course, the more the wood or the forest gets opened up, the more it's susceptible to autumnal gales. That's how trees should be, standing up and untouched. Here we have an example of what I object to. This is one aspect of veteranisation. This is a quite simple form of veteranisation where they just remove the top of the tree. It basically puts so much pressure on the tree that the tree either dies or manages to survive somehow. But veteranisation is the process of encouraging the tree to age quicker. Why we are doing that, I'll never know. Even if it's to encourage saproxylic invertebrates, which are invertebrates requiring deadwood habitat for some stage in their life cycle. And Sherwood Forest was notified as a National Nature Reserve partly on that basis, but it is well known and renowned for its saproxylic invertebrate fauna. We shouldn't be doing this, and this, I strongly object to this, and most of the people that I've ever spoke to about it object to it as well. We shouldn't be doing this when there is plenty of naturally occurring, standing, dead and dying wood habitat. Especially considering you can see the branch on the right hand side here that's coming across the screen. It's off this tree. This is a tree that got damaged in the snow. I think it was 2012 when we had the bad snow, and it just ripped the top out of the tree. As you can see, the trunk and the remains of the bark is a haven for fungi. And beyond this tree are more branches that will come off. And I can see further down, there's several big, large limbs that have come off. Why they consider it necessary to basically kill the trees. That's the ultimate goal. I don't care what site it is or what special woodland it is. We shouldn't be killing trees. Here's some more examples of the work that was carried out over last winter and the beginning of this year, where they took the trees out, or the tops of the trees out, and the branches just been chopped up and left on the floor. Fair enough, a nice bit of habitat created, but we shouldn't be treating trees in this way. Not when this is a National Nature Reserve. This is part of the problem. The people think that the forest is being conserved because that's what all the press and everything that gets put out by the RSPB and Natural England, that's what the public are led to believe. To those of us that know the forest, we take a bit more convincing. There are many locals from Edwinstowe that now don't come here, but that used to come here every day, but don't because it breaks their hearts that the trees are being treated in the manner that they are. And the RSPB and Natural England have been very clever, and that they've done this veterinisation furthest away from the general public. As I mentioned earlier, it's as far away from the visitor centre and the major oak as you could possibly get. To see most of Sherwood's better trees, you really have to go away from the visitor centre and the major oak. If you can get to this end of the country park without the kids screaming and moaning that the legs are too tired and how much longer is it, you'll see some superb examples of oaks. Now there's a fine example of naturally occurring standing deadwood habitat. They say that these old trees like this are so full of invertebrates, but when you go looking for them, you can't find them. But they do, and I know for a fact that they do hold some very important and very rare species. It just takes some finding, that's all. But there's plenty of trees the same as this, without having to create more in such a hurry. Sherwood's biggest problem is a range of trees of varying ages, which is a problem they've known about for years and years, but nothing is really being done because young trees that do attempt to grow are taken out, usually as part of scrub removal programs. And at this end of Sherwood Forest, there are very few trees of different ages. If it wasn't for the plane, it would be beautiful. It'll fade out, I suppose. This time of year you get very few members of the public reaching this end of the forest, especially in midweek. A few more at the weekends. But they get to miss a really fabulous tree by not coming to this end. Although saying that, it took some finding when I've just come looking for it. And it takes some getting to because it's surrounded by some quickly developing bramble. Want to see it? This is one of the finest examples of veterinisation that is occurring within the country park. It's a stonker. Told you it was good dinner. There is no need for this nonsense at all. And this tree was a perfectly healthy tree, as you can see. But what did they do? They cut halfway through it with a chainsaw and then pulled it over and spliced it. This is the one particular tree that really sort of infuriated me earlier on this year when I first found it. We shouldn't be doing this to trees. Whether it's in the name of conservation or to encourage rare invertebrates, there's no need for this. No need for it here. And this is what's so annoying, because it makes the conservation organisations so hypocritical. They're all telling us to save trees, to plant trees, we need more trees. Well, stop taking the boggers out then. I don't think the current interest in planting trees and encouragement, shall we say, in planting trees will have the effect that it did in 1973 when we had the last one. Because most of those trees that were planted in 73 will be long gone by now. I despair. With conservation. I'm not the only one that doesn't want to see this kind of habitat creation. It's absolute nonsense. That's how trees should be in the background, like that. So bits will fall off, bits will die naturally. I'm all for invertebrates and encouraging rare invertebrates and saproxylic invertebrates. Not just saproxylic, anything. This isn't the way to do it. But as I've said before, the RSPB have been clever and done it in the least visited or populated area of the forest. So it generally goes by unseen. Which is a shame, because I believe the people and the public really need to know and see what's going on. It doesn't need to be done to encourage saproxylic invertebrates. And here's a fine example of some naturally occurring dead wood. This isn't an isolated example. There's lots of this. This came down a few years ago. And even I've had some good beetles off this. One at the beginning of the year was new to the reserve. But there's more than enough of deadwood habitat like this throughout the country park without the need to artificially create more. So there's a glimpse of veteranisation, the art of killing trees. Sherwood has a fantastic species list, not just Coleoptera, which is beetles, but a whole range of invertebrate orders. But it is known and renowned for its saproxylic invertebrates, especially saproxylic beetles. But we don't need to be taking the tops out of trees. We don't need to be deliberately killing trees. I thought the idea of conservation was to protect. I must buy a new dictionary, because mine's obviously not right. And before they all shout at the television screens, well, he don't know what he's on about. Well, I do actually. Did it to myself with the only ones ever that have collated species list for the Sherwood Forest National Nature Reserve. No one else had done it before 2008. If we hadn't done it, it would never have been done. And at the end of 2020, I can tell you that Sherwood Forest is home, or has been home, for approximately 1,201 species of beetle alone. This compares to a total of 824 100 years ago. And since 1921, 100 years ago, as we are now, or 1920, doesn't really matter which, 300 species of Sherwood's 1,201 species haven't been seen since the early 1900s. Opposingly, and this is largely through to consistent recording work, a total of 293 species have been found new to Sherwood Forest since the year 2000. Dillis and myself have plonked over 90 species, I think it might be 98 species new to the NNR, and a number of other species have come via other recorders. But a good number of records of new species have also come via specifically targeted surveys. 293 is pretty good in 20 years. But I still worry about the lost species. It's possible that some of those will be refound at some time through surveying. Dennis and myself certainly found a number of species for the first time in 100 years at Sherwood. But I'm all for encouraging invertebrates, but not through veteranisation. There is no place for veteranisation. There's no place for encouraging the early death of trees. There never has been a place for it, and there's even less of a place for it now. That's why sometimes I avoid Sherwood Forest, because when you see veteranisation taking place, and that's supposedly in the name of conservation, not in my book. Just makes me sad. And the sad element about that is that a large amount of the public fall for the propaganda that's put out. Well, that was veteranisation at Sherwood Forest Country Park. Now it's time to go home. I don't know which way to go. That down there, really beautiful, isn't it? A nice bit of autumn colour from a tree which I don't think is native to the UK. Looks nice. A glimmer of sunshine again. So I think it's time to have a steady wander back. Till another day. Long way.